I'm Bill Wilt of Assured Research. Thanks so much for joining this quick hit video where we focus on one research note taken from our October 2025 Assured briefing. If you are a subscriber to our work, thank you. If you're not, and this content and related content at the YouTube site interests you, please feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to start you on a trial to our work. The topic of this quick hit video is tort reform. I've been lucky to be out and about quite a bit over the summer and into this early fall, and lots of discussions go back to the tort reform that took place in Florida now a year and a half or more ago, and more recently in Georgia. And the thinking is, the reforms were so comprehensive, they have to result in fewer cases, lower compensable losses. They've got to drive the loss ratio lower and be catalysts for reform elsewhere around the country. The message that I want to convey to you is not that we don't think or hope that could happen. It's just that, having looked now as part of our research, looked at other instances of comprehensive reform since the year 2000, the record is more of a mixed bag than you might expect. Let me share the screen and I'll show you what I'm referring to. And once again, I'll just thank you for joining. And if you'd like to learn more about our work, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to put folks on a trial to our work. Good. So hopefully this will do it. And let me go here. So yes, drawn from our October 2025 Assured briefing. And I'll just tell you what we did. Looked back to the year 2000, found 7 instances, fewer instances than you might think, but 7 instances where states enacted very comprehensive tort reform, akin to what was passed in Georgia and Florida and I won't try to recite them off the top of my head, but many facets of reform. No two states are exactly alike, for sure, and maybe some were more comprehensive than others, but lots of reform that has happened over the last 25 years now could reasonably be characterized as fairly focused and singular. For instance, caps on non-economic damages in med-mal cases is a very common type of reform. We didn't look at those. We looked for instances where the reforms were, as I say, fairly broad, kind of sort of mirrored what you saw happen in Florida and in Georgia. And there were definitely cases where the reform was impactful. I've shown the slide on the left and a number of research notes and in a number of industry-wide presentations. The reforms that took place in Texas in the early 2000s were impactful. An observation that, in fairness, I probably should have been making earlier than I am now, is that some instances of reform, as with this one in Texas, coincided with the hard market in the 9/11 era hard market, and so it's difficult to tease out which elements of the hard market or the reform were driving losses lower. And I should point out too, the blue line is the liability burden. So we're looking in the numerator at liability losses. This would be other product and medical professional, and both occurrence and claims made, divided by that state's GDP. I really like that measure because it feels to me like a good measure of kind of the friction. It normalizes across different states and their economies, but it gives a kind of a good intuitive sense for kind of the amount of friction in that state and society, as from civil negligence. So, and then the red line is the state's medical liability loss ratio. So the point here in Texas, you see 2002, 03, and in South Carolina on the right, more like 2005, evidence would suggest that the reforms were impactful. Again, acknowledging some and perhaps meaningful tailwind from the hard market, the 9/11 era hard market. One here might say, okay, the reforms look like they worked. I'm going to come back to the shape of that curve in a second. But here are 2 other states, North Carolina 2011, I believe, were the reforms, and in Tennessee on the right, again, right around the same time, where there's no consequential evidence that the reforms worked. I think the reforms in Tennessee were more comprehensive than the ones in North Carolina, but irrespective, here you would say, look, there's no real evidence. There isn't evidence to support the hypothesis that comprehensive tort reform results in a lower liability burden and results in improved insurers' liability loss ratios. Again, the message we want to leave you with is not that we don't think. I mean, it sure seems logical that given the comprehensive nature of the reforms in Florida and in Georgia, that they are and will having an impact. Certainly, insurers talking about reforms in Florida are optimistic and suggest that there are early signs that it is working. But again, our message is not that they can't work, just that it's the record is more of a mixed bag than one might think. What's that mean from a management perspective, actuarially? I'd suggest that it means, wait till you see the good news. Don't just simply try to bake it in and hope for the best. I'm pretty sure I misspelled Tennessee there. What else did I want to mention? That look at the shape of these curves. Here's something that I think is more can be said with some more certainty, is that reform, whether it works or not, it's impacted. Here are two instances where it worked, but what happens after the liability burden and loss ratios come down for a few years? They start to rise again. And here they are, North Carolina. Clearly, they no evidence that they worked, but the loss ratio and liability burden began to rise in the years after the reform. Less impactful or less of a rise in Tennessee, but certainly you wouldn't say that they went down either. So that's what we had for you. That is in our October briefing. And as I said, thanks so much for your interest in this video. Reach out if we can set you up on a trial for our work. Have a great rest of your day.